Haidong. In this video, we're going to talk about at least one application of breathing in a form. Now, any sane person would be like, what? what was that supposed to mean? So the impetus for this, and this is going to go beyond just Gumdo. So kind of putting that off in the very beginning. So the idea of this is triggered by what was going on within the Federation and the way they are kind of teaching how to do certain forms. But the idea of breathing in the form is going to be very similar throughout martial arts. The reason why this is the first one is not because it's the most important, it's just because it's what I was teaching in class earlier and I want to make a video about it to, first of all, make sure I don't forget, because goodness knows, goodness knows my brain forgets everything. But also it is a very interesting way to kind of use up that time. But before I go into that, what do I mean? Whenever you have a pause in the form, so more or less whenever you have just a defense, right? It could be a middle guard, it could be Pao Sung Se, it could be a X block, it could be really whatever. But whenever you have a passive block, right? Meaning you just have a defense kind of out there, right? You're supposed to take, according to the Federation, 3 seconds of breathing, right? So for example, the classic example of this is from Form 3. Again, I'm going to kind of shift away from Gumdo in a bit, but this is kind of what I mean, right? So in the form, we have a bang, 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 bang. This is our first just normal guard, right? We're just holding a guard. You're supposed to hold it for 3 seconds. So it's supposed to be 1, 2, 3. And then you keep going on with the form, right? So taking another portion of it, just to have another idea of what I mean, right? We also do a bang, and a bang. 3 seconds. And then we move, right? So it seems potentially a little bit silly, right? To be like in the middle of a battle and you're like, I'm going to take 3 full seconds and then I'm going to move again. So this is something that, again, the Federation has been pushing a little bit more, and there are reasons for it. I know there's a lot of pushback because 3 seconds is a long time, but there are reasons to do that, right? So probably the video after this one is probably the easiest one to apply because it makes sense. But because, again, this is what I was teaching earlier, I want to do it now. This is obviously how great teachers do it. They just do it on the whim. But the idea that I would like for you to do, so this is going to be mostly for higher level folk. Higher level folk. We're going to be working on, in Japanese, we call it Seme, right? So Seme is the idea of pressuring someone to do something, right? That doesn't mean like peer pressure. It doesn't mean, writing nasty passive-aggressive notes. The idea of it is, if we're both in guard, I'm trying to force you to react to something, right? So the typical way of doing that is just, again, using the curve of the tips. Not necessarily the tip itself per se, kind of pushing that forward a little bit, right? Now I'm over-exaggerating, like the high-level people are not going to be like, right? But from here, just kind of being here, pushing that tip forward, trying to imagine the person you're interacting with to react, right? Now the typical reaction, right, as you can probably imagine, is if I'm here and I'm pushing forward towards your tsuki, right, so towards the, well, tsuki is the thrust, but towards your throat or trachea or between the eyes, is you want to get the sword out of the way. So if you pressure towards me, I'm like, no. That's perfect wrist strike material, right? So one thing that I would encourage you to do, so this is mostly for high levels. I'm going to dial it back for more normal things in a bit. But whenever you have that time, whenever you're in that guard where you need to take those 3 seconds, the point of this is not to wait 3 seconds. You should never be waiting in a fight, right? You can be anticipating, right? You can be getting ready to react to something, but merely waiting is a bad idea, right? So if we're here, so imagine we just did our big bang, 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 and then we're ha. So instead of being like 1, 2, 3, and you keep moving on with the form. The idea that I would like for you to, that I would encourage you to do, again, especially in higher level forms as well, 3 gets a little bit weird if you do this, but so we did bang, 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 bang here. So imagine someone's there, right? So it's not just me in the void or in the meadow singing. I'm fighting someone here. So take those 3 seconds to push, kind of feel where things are going, and then move on with the form. Move on with the form, and then, right? Move on with the form with the idea of you're just getting ready to move, right? So this is sort of like in open hand, you kind of see people just do this all the time, right? So instead of like fighters being here and be like, haha, right? You kind of here, kind of getting moving forward, and then, right? It's the same idea. I would, again, don't necessarily do this in front of a Federation master because they could be very confused. But for your own training, get used to the idea of taking those full 3 seconds to engage, right? Kind of see where you would be open and then move forward with the form. Move forward with the form, and attack. Now, what you might be asking, right, or you might be screaming to your screen if you're someone like me, is, well, that's all, well and good if we're both in middle guard, right? So if you've ever seen like a Kendo match between middle guard and Jodan, for example, or if you've ever seen any match at all that's just not between 2 Kendoka, you switch guards, right? So yes, this is kind of like the classic one. It's the first one that's usually taught to many swordsmen, but we also have, low guards, right? So kind of running through both Japanese, Korean, as well as many others, right? So we have, Geidon down here. We have Chochunsei Chiyase down here. Chochunsei, left wing, right wing. We also have some, fun, Italian guards like Denta di Gingaro. We have a bunch of different guards. Can you still Seme, right? That'll be a new game show. Can it Seme? But the idea of this is, yes, the idea of Seme and the idea of pressuring, right, is not just the sword motion of like the 2 swords rubbing up against each other, but the idea here. So for example, if I take one of my favorites, so the Denta di Gingaro, right? I love the fight in this one. I could just be like, and that'd be weird, right? However, that's not pressuring, right? I want to pressure from here. I'm just moving over so I can actually see myself. To pressure here, I'll probably use more of that back hip, right? Back hip, getting ready, getting that left hand behind the sword. So whenever I'm ready, I can kind of like shift, and bang, going for that thrust. And notice this will work for many others, right? So you can be in either Jodan or Chochunsei, or I know there's a German and Italian version of this as well. But from here, right, so it could be, again, you could do this. You could do this if you want to, if you really think it's sword, if you think Seme is sword. But again, it's not. It's about pressuring. That's going to be where like hips are going to be, right? Hips, maybe using a little bit of the sword, kind of showing that you're flexing, right? So the idea of this is really whenever you have a guard, whenever you have a passive guard just being out there, use that time to pressure. This again is a higher level idea. It's exhausting, as you can tell by my incessant breathing, right? But that's the idea. So I highly recommend, even if it's not middle guard, even if it's a weird guard, even if it's in the middle of the form, whenever you have a pause, imagine you're up against someone and try to pressure them in the martial arts sense. Don't try to like blackmail. But hopefully that makes sense. But this is one use of those 3 seconds that you're afforded in all the Gumdo forms. But again, try this out with other martial arts. So I know Iaido has a lot of forms as well. But whatever you practice, give it a go. But I guess with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training. Haidong!